This podcast is brought to you by the North East BIC, thanks to funding from the Durham Social Boost Project provided via DCMS, helping social enterprises grow, supporting local businesses and driving innovation across our community. Thanks. Hi and welcome back to the Good Eggs podcast. My name's Anthony McDermott and we are here today once again at Diego's Joint CIC, and today we are joined by Dr Hannah Barraclough from Clear Mind Collective CIC. Welcome, Hannah. Are you alright?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Welcome to the Good Eggs podcast. Of course, the reason we invited you in is because you are a good egg, and today we want to find out all about you, all about your kind of entrepreneurial journey, a little bit about your background, and about your new initiative, which is the Clear Mind Collective. Is that right?
Yeah. That's the newest bit.
Good. So, first of all, Dr Hannah Barraclough.
Yeah.
Who are you and where are you from?
Oh, what a question. It's quite a big one. How much do you want to know?
Well, where are you initially from? Where were you kind of born and raised?
Oh, I was actually born down south.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So I was born in kind of the southeast. Moved to the northeast like last year, primary school.
Okay. Was
Yeah.
there a reason for that, or?
Mum and dad split up. Mum wanted to get as far away from mum as possible, so she moved to the other side of the country.
Okay. And whereabouts in the northeast did that bring you to then?
Howdley-Weir, of all places.
That's a bit of a change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So from like seaside coast to Howdley-Weir.
Yeah. Okay.
Came up primary school and then been in the northeast ever since. Well, I went to university in Leicester, so spent a little bit of time in the Midlands, and then came back after I finished kind of my degree and stuff, and then been in the northeast.
So you came when you were primary school, is that right?
Like last year at primary school, which was a brutal time to move school.
How was that as a kind of transition period?
Oh, it was awful. I pretended to have a northern accent for social survival.
Give us a go with this northern accent.
I can't. Honestly, it was what I had to do, because when I first moved up, I had a really southern accent, like way more southern than what I am now. I'm a bit mismatched now. And people just would like take the piss all the time. I had to put on a fake northern accent, and I perfected it after a while to the point where like my friends would comment, like if I was out playing with them outside and then we came back to my house, they'd be like, what's happened to your voice? Because I'd be back around my mum and then speaking like southern again. But you know what? It worked. It worked.
Did you feel like you fit? Do you feel like you fit in now then?
Now I do,
So
yeah.
How long have you been here now then?
Well, I'm 37.
Okay.
So
That wasn't me asking your age, by the way.
No, it's fine. I'm not precious about my age. Don't worry, I'm not precious. So since, I don't even know how old you are last year, primary, what, year 11? 12?
12, something
Yeah.
like that.
So I've been in the north longer than the south, although I think I've still got a relatively southern accent.
There's a twang, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you get back down south at all, or?
No,
really,
used to go down south to see my dad, but I don't really ever go down much now. I still go down sometimes to see my, sounds really dysfunctional, ex-stepmom.
Okay. We'll not go there.
who I love to pieces. She's one of the wonderful people. She's a good egg. She's a good egg. So I sometimes go down to see her, but no, not very often really. I go to the Midlands still to see uni friends and things.
Yeah. So tell me about uni then. So you moved up from down south, you came and joined primary school here. I'm guessing the transition was tough, but eventually you settled in.
Yeah.
And then you kind of left school, and what was the kind of plan? Was there a plan in place, or?
No, not really a plan. So when I left primary school and kind of went on to secondary school and college and that, I think I always wanted to be like a medical doctor. I always thought that's where I want to be. So I went and did my A-levels at college and did like physics, biology, all the sciences, psychology as well, and sociology. Sharp realised that I'm not clever enough to be a medical doctor, because I was not getting very good grades in physics and chemistry. They were not going well whatsoever. But that was when I first came across psychology. So I knew I wanted to work with people, so I did all the people subjects, so like biology, chemistry, things that would get me into fields where I could work with people. And I knew I wanted to help people. Yeah. So I think that's where I thought, well, medical doctor, that was kind of my naive understanding of a place you could help people. And then I did my psychology A-level, and the second I started psychology, I just knew that was where I needed to be. I think I feel very, very lucky that the second I did psychology, I just knew that's what I had to do. obviously the chemistry and physics wasn't going very well, and that I loved, and it felt like I could naturally do it, if that made sense.
Is that because you thought you were a bit of a people person, or could you read people well? What do you think kind of spurred that on?
I think I've always been into wanting to understand people, and I think some of that comes from having quite a chaotic family, and I guess that working really well for me growing up, needing to understand why people did things, reading the tone of a room and things like that. So I think I've naturally always been interested in people, but I didn't know there was a subject that like encompassed that.
I agree, man. People are fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing that I like better than lying on a beach and just
people
looking
watching.
around. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I just because people, it's like if you go to, I don't know, say a football match, for example, and you sit in your chair, right? But everybody around you is from every walk of life. You've got high demographic areas of people, low demographic areas. You've got working class people, you've got middle class people. There's just a real mismatch.
Yeah, yeah.
But everybody's there and kind of going in the same direction. But then it's like, well, hang on a minute, you're all from different walks of life, and I love that.
And everyone's got a story.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I always had this kind of, which is a bit random, but this dream of, remember Big Brother, the TV show?
Yeah.
Which was a great kind of psychological show. Really,
I love all of them sort of things.
But I always had this dream of just plucking random people from the motorway, right? Go down, picking that car, and throw them in a house and go, let's see how you get on. Rather than the audition. But anyway, we digress. So you did your A-levels. And then you moved on and you decided to go to, which uni did you go to?
So I went to Leicester University.
Okay.
And that was when I did psychology with sociology, because I did my A-levels in psychology and sociology, and I still wasn't sure which one I wanted to go down, because psychology is the study of individuals, whereas sociology is more like communities and organisations and bigger spaces. So I did split subject at Leicester Uni.
How was Leicester Uni, by the way?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I really liked it. I really liked it.
Did you live the uni life, or were you more subdued, or did you?
I think I did. Yeah, I think I did the uni experience. Brilliant. Yeah.
I think that's one of the regrets I have, is not doing uni. People always say uni, like the 3 or 4 years that I did was just great, and I never got to do that. So no, I think I did. I don't think I did it as maybe well as other people, but I think I did it enough to say I had the experience, if that makes sense. But yeah, juggling stuff with family as well alongside, which I think made uni a bit tricky. Okay.
And I did find halls slightly difficult at times.
Any particular reason for that, or?
I think just managing being in a space with other people. Like when you grow up, you find your tribe, and you kind of know your tribe. I think when you're at uni, it's that kind of still chaotic identity, working it out, where do you fit in the world, and I think you're still trying to work out what your tribe are. And I think being in halls, there was a few people that were my tribe, but there was lots that weren't, and I think it was trying to navigate how do you live alongside people that aren't your tribe, and I think that was quite hard to navigate. But I actually work with a lot of students now, in my private practice, and that is some of the stuff that comes up quite a lot. So in some ways it's quite validating, because I was like, is it just me? But actually I think it's something that all students struggle with, actually, that it's really interesting being thrown in with lots of different people, and I think that's really good for us to experience those different people, but actually that's really hard as well.
It's really interesting, because obviously you moved up from down south, from primary school, thrown in with a load of northerners, and obviously you did that, and then uni was a bit more challenging for you. It's just interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know why. It just was. I don't know whether it was going to a new town and just lots of. I think that is a massive transition period, isn't it? It's the first point of real independence. It's the first point of like living on your own, doing all that stuff. And again, through the work I do with lots of students, that does feel like a real pinch point for people, I think.
It's that step between childhood and adulthood, isn't it?
And I think it's really quite difficult, isn't it? Especially if you're not. I don't think I was fully fledged in my identity then. I was still working that out. I'd done the whole through college, like trying out all the different styles, being a goth, being this, being that. I'd done all of that, and I think I was still trying to find my place. And I think all of that is normal, isn't it?
Yeah,
like testing all that stuff out. But yeah, I think I was still trying to work that out. So
somebody asked me the other day about what music did you listen to when you were kind of coming through school, and I said, a bit varied, to be fair. I I says one day I'll be listening to Linkin Park, Papa Roach and Limp Bizkit.
Yeah, yeah.
The next day I'll be listening to kind of Avril Lavigne. To then I'll be listening to Clubland and Bass Hunter. And
oh
it was
my
like,
goodness, I'm the same.
And then Christina Aguilera popped up and I'm like, what's going on here?
Literally, you've just talked like my growing up. My growing up, that was literally what it was. And I did all of those shades. I think that was really important for me to experience all of that. Because I feel like I've taken a bit from all of them and that's who I am. I don't think any of those were where I totally fit, if you know what I mean. And I love all of that music still, actually. I'm quite happy listening to it all. But yeah, so uni was really good. So I did my degree at Leicester, and then I came home and then I did my master's, because I think through my degree I realised that psychology was more where I wanted to be than sociology. And actually psychology could incorporate sociology anyway, whereas not so much the other way around. But I sharp realised how difficult it was to actually become a psychologist and how it was really for the long haul. And there was many times where I thought, can I do this? But it was also like, I don't know where else to go, or I don't know, I found where I fit.
That was your tribe, yeah?
Yeah, and I was like, if I don't do this, I don't know what to do. So, and there was a few times I had a bit of a crisis of confidence of, can I complete this journey? And it was like, shall I be a teacher, or shall I do this, or shall I do that? But it was always like, no, I've got to make this work because this is what makes my heart sing. And I always thought like I watched my parents do jobs that they didn't enjoy, and, you know, people around us, and I was like, if there's one thing I really want to do is a job that means a lot to me and value driven and all of that, because then you go into work and you're earning a living, but it doesn't feel like that. Yeah. And that is absolutely how I feel now with what I do. So realised that it was a long haul journey, kind of signed myself up for that. And then did my master's. So I did a master's in health psychology, because I think I still was kind of, I guess, grieving the idea of not being a medical doctor. So I was like, well, how do I still get myself in that health field?
Do you think you felt a bit guilty about that, maybe, because that was your initial kind of goal and then it didn't work out? Maybe?
Yeah. And I think I did go on a bit of a journey with having to grieve not doing that, because I just always assumed I'd be like a medical doctor helping people. And that felt like the really way, I knew I wanted to help people. That is so important to me. And that was like, you know, if you say to someone, name a career that's helping people, most people would go doctor or nurse. Of course, that would be where you go. So yeah, I think I had a bit of a grieving process, and I think doing health psychology was a way of going, I'm letting go of it, but not fully. So
where was your master's at?
So Teesside. So I did that at Teesside Uni because I wanted to move back home to pay. I didn't want to get any more student loans. I'd already had tons from my degree, so I decided to work and pay for my master's. So I did my master's full time and worked. And I worked as a support worker.
That's good. So you've lived experience of the role as well, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, I knew I wanted to do it. I thought, well, if I'm going to do this journey, I need to kind of do jobs that are in the right area. Mm-hmm. So I went and did support work for a charity called Mental Health Matters. So I did support working for them for a few years. I was an employment coach for them for a little bit, helping people get back into employment. I actually really love that.
In a place like Teesside as well, where we know there's lots of challenges. And, you know, you get to work coalface, don't you, with real people. So
it was really nice. I really enjoyed that work, actually. And then like the way to go was to get a post called an assistant psychologist. So that was so I had to work towards getting onto the doctorate. It's really hard. Hundreds of people apply every year, and there's only like 12 places on each course.
I didn't realise it was so kind of...
Your chances are really slim. So I knew I had to get loads of experience, do my master's, because you kind of got to stick out in your application. So I did my master's, and like the gold standard of route on back then was get an assistant post. And if you got an assistant post, you were almost there. So I got an assistant psychologist post. So yeah, I worked in burns and plastics. I did a bit in cardiac, renal, did a bit of everything really.
And how was that? That must have been, you must have seen some challenging things there, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Do you know what? It was absolutely fascinating because I actually got to go into surgery and see a skin graft in theatre. That was amazing.
I was going to say that was really cool, but you know what I mean? It
was fascinating because I was like, that's insane. That's actually insane. Edit this out if you need to. But I basically saw a man have his bollocks put on his face.
There's the clip that we're going to use. That's on the TikTok straight away. I mean, that's going to sell the podcast. I mean, if there's anything else that people wanted to come and watch,
do you know what's even
what
worse?
are you talking about?
I talked about that on my first date with my husband.
No wonder you're a keeper, Hannah, to be fair. I love that.
We always laugh about that.
I love that.
We always laugh about that. Yeah, so I got to go into surgery.
I need to know about this, right? So bollocks got grafted onto the face, was that right?
Yeah.
So well, I'm guessing there was a burn?
Burn on the face,
right.
yeah. And that's like soft skin.
Wow. I mean, there's a whole new meaning to teabagging, isn't it? It's,
quite literally.
I mean, disclaimer, if that was you, I'm really sorry about that.
It will have been done loads of times, it's fine. But yeah, so working in burns and plastics, I think it was that real I got to go into theatre and have that real experience of what people go through. And do you know what? It was really helpful to see what actually they experience. And
I guess from a psychologist's point of view as well, though, I mean, some of these people are going through some real trauma. That must have been... Did you speak to them, I'm guessing?
Yeah, because it's really good standard burns procedure. So if you go into hospital with a burn, because it usually changes your kind of the way you look, doesn't it? Because you get a scar and things. You actually have to see a psychologist upon admission.
Right. Okay, that's good. Actually, I didn't
an assessment.
That.
Yeah, it's like standard burn protocol. Well, it was when I was an assistant. Yeah. Hopefully it still is now. So yeah, worked in burns and plastics, got to learn loads about kind of health and being in that hospital environment, which I did really love. Did my assistant post for a few years. I applied to get on the doctorate. So the way it works is you apply to 4 unis.
Right, okay.
And like hundreds of people apply, and there's only about 12 places per course. Again, there was back then, there's more funding now. First year I didn't, so you apply, you then kind of get an interview and then you might get on.
Right.
So the first year I applied to 4 unis and didn't get nothing at all. I applied again the next year. My application was pretty much the same, just another year of experience, and I got 4 interviews. So I went from literally nothing to 4 interviews. I only went to 2 of them because I knew I wanted to stay in the northeast. Yeah. So I did my Newcastle and Teesside one.
Okay, great.
And then got a place on at Teesside. So I did my doctorate at Teesside.
How long was your doctorate? Out of interest?
Well, it's supposed to be 3 years, but I took 5 because I had 2 kids. Because I like to make things hard myself.
You weren't busy enough, so why not get those in the mix as well?
I literally got married like a couple of days before I started the course.
Wow.
And then had 2 babies on the course, and we moved house. Wow, so yeah, don't do anything by halves.
Yeah, but you know what though, that gives you that experience of some challenge. It might be a different challenge for other people, but you know, juggling plays, juggling business, it all adds up, doesn't it? Having that experience.
Do you know, it was having kids on the course, because it was a bit of a taboo, you know. So when you got on the course, because you were so lucky to get on, you don't have kids, you wait till the end. And I really hated that. I almost like rebelled against that. I was like, well, if I'm ready to do things in my life outside of work, I'm going to do that. Like, I'm not like work is a lot, but it's not everything. You've got to balance, haven't you? So yeah, I was like, well, we're ready to have a child. That's what we're going to do. But yeah, it was probably the best thing that happened to me on the course, because I think prior to that, like getting good grades and all of that was like everything. I would like procrastinate, rewrite, overdo. Do you know? Really far too much. And then
is this, by the way, Hannah? What year are we thinking when this is happening?
So it was like partway through my first year I got pregnant.
So this is 2000 and...
Oh God. I qualified...
How old are your kids? That's probably the easiest way.
My son is 9.
Okay, so we're looking at, this is kind of 2014, 15.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah. And after having him, it put all like everything into perspective a little bit. And instead of like writing and rewriting and I'd write it and I'd send it in. And do you know what? Weirdly, my actual grades got better because I wasn't messing around, rewriting and hashing it over and going. Things have always...
Funny enough, I've got a friend of mine I think he's got a doctor now. He's been at university for about 30 years of his life.
Yeah.
And he said that as well. He said, you know, people spend too much time procrastinating over
it. Yeah, I did. I
absolutely
did.
He said, after all these years of academia, he says, now I realise you've just got to get it down on paper.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, it'll be all right.
Yeah.
And I kind of get that. So
yeah. I think I've always been quite vulnerable to being a bit of a perfectionist, so that really helped with that.
Yeah, okay.
And it was, I think, to be honest, I think it was the best thing that happened in terms of like managing workload and stuff. Because I had certain amounts of time that I had to do the work, and I did it and handed it in, and it was definitely better. So much so I then had another child on the course.
So you got 3 kids, yeah?
No, 2. I had 2 kids on the course.
Yeah, what are they called? Do you want to give them a shout out?
Max and Isabel.
Oh, hello, Max and Isabel.
Yeah.
So we're now in what, 2015, 2016?
Yeah,
finishing the doctorate? Or?
Yeah, so 5 years after that, finished the doctorate, and then got my first job in the NHS as a qualified clinical psychologist.
Good.
And I actually worked in a hospital, so I went keeping the hospital theme. So I went and worked in Hartlepool Hospital, so North Tees. I worked across them, and I worked in the chronic pain service. Okay. So I worked there for a few years.
And again, that must have been quite different to burns because I'm assuming here, but burns is trauma. It's happening. It's fast. It's urgent. Whereas people in chronic pain, they've possibly been there for 20, 30 years.
It was different. I think, you make a really good point. Like in the burns kind of side of things, it's very much trauma and dealing with that and the changes that might make to the body afterwards and adjustment to that. There's a lot of adjustment work. I think in the chronic pain, it was more about how you live alongside a difficulty. Because
tough,
really tough. So I worked in the pain service. I also did 1 or 2 days a week in diabetes, which was very similar work. It was, again, how do you live alongside having a condition like diabetes? Because obviously and I think it's really important to always note about like the mind and body connect, that you can't separate them. They affect one another. So of course, if you've got a health condition, it's naturally going to impact how you feel. And obviously, especially something like chronic pain, waking up most days in pain, like that's really hard. Really enjoyed that work. I did lots of one-to-one work, lots of group work. We ran kind of chronic pain programs. And then we went into COVID and being in a hospital through COVID, that was quite an experience.
I can imagine, yeah.
So at that point, we kind of stopped working in our respective services because obviously people weren't coming in for appointments. And then we kind of down tools and started providing support to the hospital staff, so to that, like the doctors and nurses and things, because obviously they were on the front line dealing with COVID.
By the way, can you believe it's roughly 5 years today?
Is it 5 years?
We went into lockdown. Wow. That's unbelievable, isn't it?
Wow.
I was watching something the other day on social media. From a psychologist's point of view, this must be fascinating COVID as well. I mean, the whole world just changed, didn't it?
It's madness, isn't it? And the ripple effects, like I'm still seeing it now in a lot of the therapy work I'm doing.
You see it with kids, don't you? Kids, society is completely turned. I think everything's just different, isn't it?
Yeah, it is different. I don't think life will never be the same after that, isn't it? And I think even just adjusting to that is really hard. And I think some people still are struggling to adjust from that.
How did you find being in the hospital with the staff? I'm guessing were pretty traumatized. I mean, I know they had good spirits and they
did what they had to do. I don't know how they did it, quite frankly.
It was really frustrating. I saw something on social media, and there was a video of some nurses dancing. The TikTok things that was at the time, and people are still blah 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 blah. Why are they doing that? Listen, these people were in a really traumatic time, and they had to go and face it head on. It wasn't like I could sit in my back garden and whatever. I had to hide away, and people are still having to go. People, I'm like, you know what? Get over it. They had to have some sort of
outlet.
Exactly. So I'd imagine it was.
And do you know what? We were in an office where like the staff would come to us if they wanted to like a chat and stuff like that. And there was down times when people weren't coming because obviously they're busy in the hospitals. And we actually made TikTok videos in that time. And it was the bit of light in all of the darkness because it was so dark at that time. There wasn't really any light. We were being told to do everything that instinctually went against being human. Like don't be near others, don't connect with others. Actually, the whole purpose of being a human is to connect and to be around other people. So to be told not to do that is really...
Well, it's funny because I was in the armed forces. I was a medic in the armed forces. Yeah. Do you not think when we were on operational theatre in Afghanistan, do you not think we were pissing around for some of the time?
You have to, don't you? It's the only way.
You have to do something to decompress. So I saw these things at the time, and even now, when I look and I go, crikey, what did you want them to do? Did you want them to just go home and cry in the corner?
Yeah, exactly. And they would have done that as well.
Of course, yeah.
But give them their 2 minutes of TikTok fun, crikey. Yeah. So that was really interesting, tough, but...
So you worked all the way through, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much. That was when I started to drop my hours in the NHS, though.
Okay.
And started to set up my private practice, which was my first business.
Was there a reason for that, or...?
I love the NHS and what it stands for, and I really wished it worked, but I think I, as a professional, really struggled to work in that industry, just in that organisation, just because I wasn't able to help people in the way I wanted to. I thought I've spent like 10 years of my life training to be a psychologist, and then I'm told I can only see somebody for 6 sessions. And I feel like I'm not really helping that much. I wasn't feeling like I was doing enough help.
Do you feel like that's a frustration that's echoed around the whole service as well? And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
Lots of the challenges we've got.
Yeah. Well, there's shortages of psychologists in the NHS now because there is exodus of psychologists leaving because they can't work in the way they want to. And I do understand funding and all of that jazz, but it's not providing the service it needs to. Like when I left the NHS, the waiting list for the chronic pain programme was 2 years. It was 3 years to see a psychologist. Like, that just feels unethical. And to some degree, I actually felt like I was adding to the problem for some people. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. There's a term called iatrogenic pain, and it basically means where the system causes more pain. So if people are on a waiting list for a long time and they're suffering, the system kind of causes more pain because they might not then go and look at other alternatives because they're waiting for this thing that they think is going to be the magic pill or the magic bullet, which it isn't, because it's always a number of things, isn't it? So yeah, I think I got into management in the NHS, and I think that was the bit where it was game over for me, because I was then the person that was having to say, no, you can only see that person for 6 sessions because of the waiting list. Whereas prior to being in management, I was kind of a bit oblivious to it, if I'm honest. So I think going into management was the game over for me in the NHS, because then I started to feel the weight of the waiting lists and things.
That's really honest, and I think, and thanks for sharing that. I think, some people might be watching that might have an opinion on the NHS and the staff, but I feel like everybody within the NHS, staff especially, they get it. And it's an all-round frustration. And the question is, how do we fix it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or is it fixable? Do we think it's fixable?
I mean, I hope so, because I think what it stands for is amazing, and I do believe in that. But yeah, something needs to change, doesn't it? I'm pleased that there's people that can work in that environment, because unfortunately I couldn't. It was having too much an impact on me personally. And then I wasn't enjoying the work that I wanted to do. Set up my private practice.
How was that? And that must have been exciting.
Yeah, it was scary but exciting. Learned a lot of lessons about business very sharply. Even though I'd spoke to loads of people and then they said don't do this and don't do that, and I did all of those things.
Tell me some of the things you did straight away.
Well, I was always told don't worry about referrals, they'll come.
Yeah.
And I just said yes to everything because I panicked that they wouldn't come and then had too much work. I think my business plan for my first year was see 2 people, and I think I ended up seeing 25. But so the work did come, even though I didn't believe that. Also, the other thing they said is niche down and don't say yes to everything. Again, I didn't do that. I said yes to everything, and then every bit of money I earned, I spent on training because I felt like I wasn't good enough in anything.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because
it's funny because it's really. I'm going to psychoanalyze it here, right?
Go ahead.
So this is something that you've said all the way through, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you didn't think that you were clever enough to become a medical doctor. And that's really interesting. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, really interesting.
It's my own stuff coming out there. We've all got a bit of I'm not good enough though, I think, haven't we?
Imposter syndrome makes the
Oh yeah, mine can be raging sometimes.
Really, right?
Yeah.
And just out of interest, how do you manage that now? Because I don't know this, but perhaps do you ever sit back and go, actually, do you know what, I'm doing all right, or do you still hyper-criticise yourself almost?
I think I still do it a bit, and I think I always will. And part of me doesn't want to fully give that up, because I think it keeps us on our toes.
Yeah. And
I think it keeps us striving, because I always want to be somebody that performs to a certain level. So I don't want to get rid of that altogether. It's like that inner critic. I think whenever I do inner critic work with people, that negative voice, it's not about completely getting rid of it, because actually, when you've bed rotted for days, you need it to get you out of bed. It's not a fully bad thing. But I think probably the biggest thing for me is learning to have a better relationship with myself. Okay, so just being able to go, do you know what? I am all right, my messy self. There might be bits about me that's not great, but isn't that everyone? And I think maybe being a bit more okay with who I am, warts and all. I think that's probably the biggest thing that's helped me manage imposter syndrome. I really like to do that work with other people now. So I do quite a lot of work with that sort of thing.
So in your own business then, so you've had your own, I'm guessing you're a limited company, is that right, with that business?
Yeah, with that one, yeah.
So what's the name of the business?
So that's Durham Psychology, and that's where I do a lot of one-to-one work with people, and that's been going for about 4 or 5 years now.
Still going all right?
Yeah, it's going really well. Good. Yeah.
What would you say, before we talk about your new venture, or your newer venture, what would you say is the best lesson in business that you've kind of learned along the way?
Oh, best lesson.
Especially from the early days.
Well, from the early days, it would be maybe listen to other people that have gone through it a bit more. Because I was told all of this stuff and I didn't. But then part of me thinks, did I have to learn those my own way? Yeah. I think there is so much good business support out there. I would say soak it all up. Yeah. because there's people out there that want to help you and support you, and there's loads of stuff out there. So be open-minded and go along and make time for it.
Speak to as many people as you can.
Yeah. I've learned so much from engaging in kind of lots of things, lots of business support, like from the BIC and things like that. So that was probably my biggest thing. Because a lot of the time so I'm a psychologist, I'm not a businesswoman naturally, if that makes sense. And I think I've learned a lot of my business stuff through going to these trainings, and I always pick something up. There's always something. So put all that together.
I think that's a real skill to take as well, is to go to everything and pick up one little thing.
Yeah.
You know, I always say this to anyone really, you know, don't try and pick everything up, because listen, half of it won't be applicable, or you just might not take it in.
Yeah.
But if you can take one tiny little thing away and build that in,
and that always is.
Yeah,
that always is something.
Love that. Yeah. Love
that.
That.
So I think I've always prioritised that and made time for that, which I think a lot of other people in business don't do or won't do. So yeah, that's probably my biggest thing, is be open-minded and go to things and explore. And
good. So you had that business now for 4 or 5 years, and then now you are venturing into the social enterprise world.
Yeah. So again, when I left the NHS, it was something that I always wanted to do.
Yeah.
Like I always knew that once my business was up and running, paying the bills, kind of really steady and settled, and I wasn't worrying about referrals and things anymore, I wanted to set up a non-profit to, I guess, for me to feel ethically balanced, if you know what I mean. And I knew obviously there's lots of people out there who can't afford to pay for therapy, or afford to pay for mental health support and things like that. I wish I'd done it sooner, but every time I'd looked into it, it felt a bit overwhelming. I'm not going to lie. Like, you know, even just things like, which is actually really simple, the Articles of Association, when you look at that online, like with no knowledge, I'm like, what? But
all the business
it's actually really simple.
Even if you're a limited company, a social enterprise, everything that's on Companies House or anything associated with the government, they just seem to make it as difficult as possible.
So over the last few years, I have looked and gone several times to go, right, I'm finally going to do this, and just never done it, because it always felt too scary. I didn't know enough. I didn't feel confident. Probably a bit of imposter coming in.
So what was the idea then? So you had your practice that was going reasonably well, or really well.
Yeah.
And then you were like, okay, I want to do a bit more. And what did the bit more look like? Was that given free and discounted sessions? Was that sort of...
So I think... So I absolutely love my therapy work. I get so much out of it. I really enjoy going along with people on their journey. I think it's such an honour to do that, for people to let me in. But it's really hard work as well. It's quite emotionally tough. So I think I wanted to make sure that in a new venture that was kind of non-profit, that I did have a proportion of it that was maybe therapeutic, to be able to let people who couldn't afford it access it. But also maybe doing more kind of training and consultation. Because actually I think a lot of the time, well, all the time, we do know what we need. We just don't listen, or we're not guided enough. Or actually, I think training and awareness can be kind of preventative rather than, I think a lot of the time therapy is reactive. People come to therapy when they're already in crisis. Actually, if they'd come to therapy or did some training a year before, they probably wouldn't have got where they were. So I think trying to be a bit more preventative. Also, I'm just so passionate about making sure that people look after their mental health, that I want to spread the word. I want to talk about it. I could talk about it all day long.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because mental health, I remember growing up, and even as a young soldier, I remember mental health wasn't even a thing. And you must remember this time when mental health wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Even as you were going through your psychology degree, mental health wasn't spoken about the way it is.
COVID's actually helped quite a lot with it.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think there was a big thing about kind of men in particular, the early 2010s, it became okay all of a sudden.
Yes.
Whereas prior to that, it wasn't on anybody's agenda, was it?
Yeah.
And it seems to be everywhere now, and rightly so.
Yeah.
But I find that really fascinating.
Yeah.
And, you know, for hundreds of years probably, you know, like my nan and grandpa's generation, for example, they just didn't look at mental health.
And I still get some of that. If I get like older people come to therapy, it's very much still that. And sometimes it's almost like doing therapy to come to therapy, if that makes sense, to understand it. But I've definitely, interestingly, in my referrals, I see a lot more men now than I did when I first started. I have quite a good proportion of men now, which is actually really nice. Setting up the Kick was much more about, I think, being able to talk about it a bit more, being passionate about it, being able to educate people, guide people, that sort of thing. So I think I wanted to set it up for a long time. It was always part of the plan when I went private. It was always part of the plan, because I think for me that's how it felt okay to walk away from the NHS, knowing that I was going to do that at some point, but also accepting that I needed to get my business up and running and make sure I could pay the bills and all of that, especially having kids and things.
So who's the kind of target demographic then, or is it or is there not one really? Or
For
is
the
it,
CIC?
Yeah, for the kick, yeah.
So I think because obviously running my own business, I've known how great it is, but also how hard it is. I really wanted to hone into kind of business owners, other people that run kicks. Because I think, well, we know that entrepreneurs actually are like 3 or 4 times more likely to have mental health problems.
It's a lonely world, isn't it?
Yeah,
it really is.
yeah. Well, it's just juggling everything, isn't it? There's different financial pressures, and I think that boundary between work and home is blurred a lot more. So yeah, and I think just having my own experience, I come from a family of people that are self-employed. So my grandparents had hotels, restaurants. My dad was a carpenter contractor. My mum and stepdad have a coffee pod. Like, they've all been self-employed. So I've kind of lived that experience of the trials and tribulations of running a business, and then obviously doing it myself. My husband is self-employed as well. So really personally knowing the ups and downs of it, and lessons learned, and wanting to share that, especially like the mental health side of things, because we know how much our mental health affects business decisions, decision making, resilience, all of that sort of stuff. So,
and I think in the social enterprise sector as well, lots of social entrepreneurs are dealing with people who have challenges themselves.
Yeah, like the well-being sphere.
Yeah, you know, and often, not always, but 99% of the time, I would say, people who are social entrepreneurs have really good hearts.
Yeah.
Probably, as you said earlier, not particularly business people or business minded. They really want to do good stuff, and often they give, but actually they're not taking time for themselves, are they? And you must see that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think there's an extra layer with people that run non-profits or kicks because of what they're in it for, why they want to do it. I think sometimes they're more likely to offer lots of things for free or give up their time, and things like their boundaries aren't as good with that sort of stuff, because obviously they're wanting to create change. They're good people, good eggs. I think sometimes they maybe are not great with their boundaries, and actually you can help people and look after yourself. It's that saying, you know, that they say when you go on an aeroplane, you've got to put your own oxygen mask on first. And I think people that run CICs are notorious for putting on everyone else's before they put their own on.
That's brilliant, by the way. That's fantastic.
And you're just going to conk out, aren't you? You're going to put 4 oxygen masks and conk out, and then what's the point of you setting up your CIC to start with? But I think it's helping people understand that, and I think giving themselves permission to be able to take time for themselves and look after themselves, that's really hard to do. And I think going in and telling people it's okay to say no, it's okay to take time. Actually, if you're in a good place, think how many more people you can help, and that's what you want to do. That's what this is all about.
And I think you're right, time is such an important commodity, isn't it?
Yeah, it's precious, and we don't get it back.
No, you don't get it back, you know. And I think, talking about COVID, as we have quite a bit, I think COVID really showed us that, you know what, tomorrow might not come.
Yeah.
And tomorrow we might get stuck in our house. We might, you know, be told we can only do this. It could happen. You know, the world's a volatile place. You know, lots of things are happening all the time.
Yeah.
With our friends across the water, which we'll not go into.
Yeah. Exactly.
But we don't know what's
Instability
coming.
all the time, isn't there?
You know, you're right. So I think time is so important, and it's so valuable to make sure you make the most of that time, isn't it? And I'm guessing you're enjoying that journey so far.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Quite early days, so I only set it up kind of last year. But yesterday I actually ran my first training session. So
fantastic,
that was
brilliant.
a bit of a milestone.
Good.
So that was really exciting, really nice. Felt really good afterwards. Nice to get some good feedback and stuff. So that was brilliant. And I just hope I can do lots more of it.
I'm sure you will. And what would you say is the biggest thing you've learned from the social enterprise world so far? What's your biggest learn that you've taken away?
I don't even know if this is the biggest learning thing. It's just having more faith in people, actually. I know that sounds really cheesy.
Do you know what? I totally get it. You know, I think being in this sector, you see that there really are good people out there. Really good people. Yeah. People doing things that you don't even have a clue what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, we talked a little bit about the NHS, a massive organisation doing loads of amazing things, but actually there's a whole sub-world underneath all of that that's doing things pretty much for nothing. Yeah.
And because I think, I'm not going to lie, doing my type of job, I hear the worst of everything. And I think sometimes it's really, I've got to remind myself that not everyone's bad. And actually being in the kind of CIC world, I meet so many lovely people, and that's so good for the soul. And I think in a way it's restored my faith in people a little bit, maybe. But yeah, just knowing that there are people out there that want to do good. I think one of the things that I worried about when I set up my kick was, why would anyone want to support a kick? You know, like getting directors and things like that. Why would people want to give up their time for that? And actually people do, and they do want to help, and actually people help without asking sometimes. And that's really nice. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. But again, time, I think making sure you're managing your time and boundaries, they're probably some of the biggest business lessons I've learned as well.
I love that. Last thing then, What's next for Dr Hannah Barraclough and the Clear Mind Collective?
To grow the Clear Mind Collective, because obviously it's early days, so I think about sustainability, think about how I can grow that, funding, obviously getting a trading income, all of those sorts of things that you require to run a successful kick. I think the next step as well is that we've got a building which we've called Durham Wellness Space. It's based in Coxer. That's just come off the back of me losing my therapy space. So rent was the same price as mortgage, so bought property. And that's going to be kind of a community hub which the kick can be run out of, and I can bring in lots of other kicks and community things, and there's going to be lots of room rental. It's going to be a real nice homey feel, and obviously I run my private practice out of that as well, so there's kind of a business venture there, but with the other ones kind of intertwined, if that makes sense. And a nice place for the home for the kick, because I think that was one of the things I was worried about, is I've got this idea and I want to do it, but where do I do it? And I'll go and do it in other places, of course, but at least I've got a base. So I've got a place where I know I can at least have a foot in. So that's probably the next point from where I'm going, is to build that, and hopefully I think that in itself will help the kick grow, because I'll be able to bring people in, network, all of that sort of stuff. So I think I'm hoping that the kick will naturally grow by having the space as well to bring other people in.
I love that. Well, coming to the end. We've cracked the top off the egg. We've scooped everything out. So if you had one message to the world, Hannah, what would it be?
Just look after yourself, please.
Love that. Well, that's a fantastic place to finish. Well, Hannah, you've been a good egg, so we're going to present you with our very own special good egg. So thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.